Hey, it's Alex Williams with the new stack here at Node.js Interactive in Austin, Texas. And I'm here with Darryl Taft, a longtime industry veteran, and James Hush, who works with the NFL. Hey, James, how are you?
Hi, Alex. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and I know you chatted with Darryl earlier, and one of the themes we're looking at for Node Interactive is about security, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just interested in hearing about the NFL app overall, kind of the scale of it, right? And how do you make sure everything's safe and sound? And when you're using Node.js, what are the processes you go through? What are the tools that you're using? Just helping our listeners out there get a perspective from really someone who's building one of the biggest scale out apps you can find, really.
Mm-hmm. So we've been using Node.js with React for the past, I want to say, about 2 years now.
Okay, let me just back up then. So why do you use React?
We're using React. The history behind that was we had a new VP of engineering joined at the NFL, and he came from Silicon Valley. He came from working at a startup. And when he joined, he really helped shape the culture of the engineering team. So a lot of the NFL.com and the current homepage is still on legacy JSP, 8, 9, 10-year-old code. Fantasy still on 9, 10-year-old PHP. So he came in. There's a bunch of new projects starting for the beginning of the season, and he said, "Okay, let's try something new. Let's bring us out the Stone Age here, and let's try to use some new modern technology." So it was kind of a choice between React. Took a little bit look at Angular, but we made a proof of concept app in React. I think it was actually the PlayStation 4 app we actually made in React. And after we worked with that, we saw how quickly it was to get productive in it, the tooling behind it and the community behind it. And we went all in, and we bet on React over the past 2 years or so. And it's paid off amazingly. Community's really picked up on React. Facebook's picked up, continues to support React. Projects like React Router and Babel have been super helpful for us. So we started on a bet, and it's paid off. And one of the big features we're really liking about React is the ability to render on the server, and that's what we're using Node.js for. Is we can render a React app on the server and then send the web browser everything already pre-rendered, which helps speed up things, speed up load times, and helps with search engine optimization.
If you had that choice today, though, would it be React or would it be Angular 2?
We would still be with React. We've had a lot of positive experience with it. Angular 2, I'm a TypeScript fan, so that looks kind of neat. I do want to take a look at Angular 2, but we're going to keep going forward with React.
Cool. So you made this decision to use React. So getting back to that the thinking about making sure it's safe and sound, what were some of the things that you were thinking about, and what are the things that you implemented to make sure everything was secure and you were that app was scaling and not breaking down?
Sure. So I wasn't there when they made the switch. I've been there for about a year, but one of the big things we've really focused on the last 2 years is automated testing, specifically using Protractor, which allows you to write Selenium tests with JavaScript for pretty much every new web property, from NFL.com/Game Pass to Anthology. We have a series of automated UI tests that go through and click on every single button, check every single page, check when you resize the page and the viewport changes to mobile, checks that all the buttons work on there. And every time we change even one line of code, we run these tests on about 20 different machines in parallel, using Sauce Labs on 3 different browsers. So every one line of code, everything's getting clicked through. Setting up those tests at first took a while. It took a lot of effort on our part, but it's paid off so well in this season. I can't even tell you.
How so?
We haven't had like a single issue on the website that I can think of during any of the game days. No, not a single like killer issue whatsoever during game days. And my coworkers told me in years past, if you were on game day support, so if you were the front end developer, like taking support during the game day, it used to be really bad. Like things would break. You'd have to fix it live in production. And now I was doing game day support for the last Thursday game. I came into work a bit late because the game was on until about 10 o'clock at night, and monitored the chat room, and it was just green, because every time you change a line of code, we'll see things break on the tests like all the time, but those only hit staging, they don't hit production. So I'm a huge fan of writing tests now. It's saved everyone a lot of stress because of it.
I'm curious about the season versus the off season.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like for you? What's the work day like? Is it any different or?
So during the season, it is a bit different. So during the season, we don't start anything too big. We kind of like we still release code. We still release updates throughout the week, but nothing too large. But the big difference during the season is for Monday nights, Thursday nights, and Sundays nights, there's always one person on support on rotation. So at the beginning of the season, my manager just runs math.random on our names, and that determines your support schedule. So actually last Thursday I was on support, so I'd come into work at around 2-ish and stay from 2 until 10, just in case something goes wrong and they need someone to fix something. Off season, that's when we really start on some of the bigger projects. So for example, we're planning this off season to begin redesigning the NFL fantasy website. So something like that is going to take a lot of months and time to kind of go through. So that's when we do like the bigger stuff.
I'm thinking, again about your use of Node.js, and a lot of discussion here is about curation of modules, right? And
Mm-hmm.
using certified modules. What are your guys? How do you guys approach making sure that the modules you're using are safe and secure?
Mm-hmm. So for what we do at the NFL, I'm technically on the front end team,
Right.
but I work primarily on Node.js because I work on that little layer that's rendering the front end code.
Right.
So secure, we don't really have to worry as much about some of the security stuff, because most of the modules we're using on the front end are like React Select for the drop down box, or React Helmet to modify the document head. But the thing we do have to worry about is the size of the modules. Because every dependency we take, that's potentially more JavaScript that we're sending down to the user's browser. So we're careful about adding new modules. We try our best not to add ones unless it makes sense. So size is a big one.
So how do you manage that? What is your process for making sure they're not, you're not sending too much JavaScript to the
So
user
that's
browser?
that's primarily what myself and my coworker Rich work on, is ways to bundle the JavaScript and minify the JavaScript and group it in such ways that it kind of makes sense for each kind of page. So currently we're using JSPM, and we have a bundling script that will group. The way we have it laid out is every folder is its own domain and site. So anything for www.nfl.com/anthology is in the www folder, then the /NFL folder, then /anthology. And so we kind of group that for each site. From there we have a script that goes through And if we know certain sites are sharing certain packages, so for example, we know that 5 or 6 of the sites are all using Reflux, but NFL Game Pass is using RX, and a couple other packages are using MobX. So we wrote a script that can smartly bundle Reflux for certain pages and put it in its own little JavaScript bundle, and bundle RX and its own JavaScript bundle, like over if a user goes to this site. So what that allows us to do is if user goes to Anthology, they'll get the bundle that has React and has Reflux. And that same bundle is being used over if they go to nfl.com/apps. So now they don't have to re-download the JavaScript twice. It's already cached on their machine. So there's a lot of fiddling.
A lot of nuances.
Yep. And currently we're looking at, it's called Rollup. I don't know if you're familiar with Rollup.
No.
So the new ES6 module import syntax, what that allows you to do is you can statically analyze every single import you're using across your entire project. And so since you know at build time exactly what functions you're using in libraries, Rollup allows you, will analyze all this and only include the functions that you're actually using. So if you're using something like underscore, but you're only using one function in underscore, instead of bundling that whole library, it's only going to bundle those like 20 lines of JavaScript from underscore. And like if you're using one function from React Bootstrap, it's only going to bundle that component. So that's what Rich and I have been working on. I haven't got it 100% working yet, but it's promising. I've got it working on one React component. We're actually planning on open sourcing in the next couple of months, and managed to reduce the size for it by I think it was about 20%. So I'm really anxious to see what it'll be like for the entire project.
I'd like for you to retell the story of why you joined the NFL, and you're a developer, but every company now has to become a tech company, and that intrigued you.
Oh, yep. So I was working at startup with some really cool people, and I was actually on Hacker News after work one day, and just reading through, and it just became the beginning of the month. So they had the who's hiring message on Hacker News, like the subject. Just clicked on it, just taking a look, and I was scrolling through, and I saw NFL in Los Angeles. I was like, okay. And the first sentence was, we're not a big boring company. We're using React, we're using Swift, we're using RX Java. And I was like, whoa. So I read through the rest of the job posting. And then I noticed that they had done a React meetup like 2 months earlier. And I was like, oh, look at this. They got some cool stuff. And then I went to their GitHub page. I saw React Helmet at the time had about 1,000 stars, and now we have almost 2,500 stars. And I saw they had like a bunch of open source projects, just not very well known ones. And I was like, this is cool, because one of my dreams was to be able to work with open source at work. And so I contacted them. I got an interview. I actually interviewed with Rich, who I work with closely now, and he said, I just need someone to work on this open source project. Like, I just don't have enough time to do all the work that's here. I was like, oh, I'm down. Like, if I get to work with open source like half the time, this is great. So it's interesting because, as Darryl said, media companies have to become tech companies now, because more and more media is going online and through mobile apps, and more people getting their content through their phones. For example, we've noticed traffic on our mobile sites and mobile apps continue to go up year over year, because people are looking at their phones while the game's on. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at their phone to check their fantasy, looking at the phone, check the scores, looking at their phone. So it's really important that you have that. People expect a certain quality, especially on mobile. So it's really important to hire those like intelligent, talented engineers to make sure like the page loads quickly, make sure it runs on iOS and Android, and get that really great experience.
That's so working with open source, you still, I imagine, work quite a bit on open source projects inside the NFL.
Yes, so I'm one of the core maintainers for React Wildcat, which powers every new web property for the NFL over the past 2 years and handles server-side rendering on React. It handles all the kind of configuration details you need to get unit testing and karma and end-to-end testing all tied together really nicely. Handles routing with multiple domains really well. So every single edge case that we as an enterprise had to get working and tweak, we have it all open sourced and anyone can use it.
So what you were describing earlier, for example, this process that you go through for making sure you're not sending too much JavaScript to the end user, that would be open source too?
Yes. So it's all up on there. It needs a bit more documentation. I'm working on that in a pull request, but it's good. We actually have someone over at Disney who's using it right now for an internal project. And so Rich and I, like, every time there's an issue opened on that GitHub page, it sends us a message on Slack and in our chat room. So we always make sure we respond to them as quickly as possible.
So are you also committers on other better known projects?
Yep, I've done a couple commits for React Helmet. It's kind of cool, helping out my coworker Chris, who's the main contributor there. And I've opened up issues on Sales.js before, but and I've done like little commits to other open source projects, but nothing too fancy. I contributed to what was called Node QuickBooks because there was a bug in there. But yeah, I love it. I love what I do.
I love this angle on like how open source is, helping, a big organization like the NFL, scale out its app, but doing it still very efficiently. Because I imagine you must have had contributions from outside parties when you're thinking about, this JavaScript issue, right? And like sending too much JavaScript to the, to the end user's browser. You must have had all kinds of different feedback.
So there's one contribution in particular. It's actually one of the first contributions we got to Wildcat from an external person, and it's funny. That's why I love open source. Basically, this external person needed this feature to work for them. They needed a way to host just a normal, because React Wildcat has a server component and a client component. The server component at first, all it did was just render the page, but someone opened up a pull request that allowed you to open up just a normal Express route too. So you could do a little bit of Express just in case you needed extra middleware. And we merged in the project, didn't really think anything of it. And then about 3 months later, we were trying to get service workers working in the browser. And service workers have to be hosted on the same domain as what the user is seeing. And all our static things were hosted on static.nfl.com, but the user would go to www.nfl.com. So we needed a way to just have a route just to host like one small service worker file. And then I remembered that someone made a pull request that allowed it to do that about 3 months ago. So I went to my coworker, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what so-and-so added, just do this, and saved us at least 2 days worth of work, maybe 3.
Awesome. Any last question that you have, Darryl?
Yeah, I have to go off key a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious, what's the percentage of engineers at NFL that actually like football?
Okay. So I'm Canadian, so I don't know very much about football, but I like that people like it.
That's very Canadian.
I know the least. I know the least amount of football, but I'm learning. Like I support Detroit Lions because I'm originally from across the river from Detroit. But I'd say about as many people like football in the engineering team at the NFL as like an average company, I'd say. So the same amount of them like it as my previous company.
The game is the engineering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, James, thank you very much for for this conversation. It's been really interesting to hear your perspectives. And Darryl, thanks for joining us. And,
Thank you.
You know, we'll be back for more interviews from Node.js Interactive, and you know, we'll see you around the show.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thanks.